You may have heard a little about this, although I thought it was a little quiet, but maybe I was just focused on other things, holidays and stuff. A recent law that gives animal adoption facilities an opportunity to conduct background checks to make sure that, at least to get another tool in the toolbox to make sure that animals who are adopted are not going off to potentially abusive situations. Jessica Gilbert is with us from the Humane Society of South Central Michigan to talk about that. By the way, thanks for all you do with our Wiggly Tail Wednesday stuff, you and everybody over there at the Humane Society, because we have a great time with that.
We do have a great time. I love Wiggly Tail Wednesdays.
Wiggly Tail Wednesdays are fun, and if you didn't see it, our first Wiggly Tail Wednesday Pet of the Week was posted yesterday at WBCKFM.com, and our top 5 of the year last year went up too. And I think you can click on one through the other there at the website and see that and check it out. But you guys are very kind to indulge us with that every week, so we thank you for that.
Well, everyone loves animals, right?
That's true. That's true. This is interesting, this legislation that evidently got signed right there at the last of the year that went through with some other things in the lame duck session. This is an interesting thing. Background checks. Were you surprised by this?
We had been hearing about this for a while. It was actually a collection of 4 different bills, 2 of which were passed.
Okay.
The other 2 they are hoping to run through this next year. I believe they're stalled in the Senate right now. And those will give a little bit more teeth to some of the abuse charges. But yes, the ones that were passed deal with, among other things, being able to conduct criminal background checks using the Michigan State Police iChat system. And
wow.
People who apply to adopt, animal shelters and humane societies, that sort of thing, would be able to actually get onto the iChat system and do a criminal background check. It won't cost the shelters anything, which is huge because we process a lot of adoption applications, and the normal fee is $10 per person, so we won't have to pay that. That doesn't start right away. It should start 90 days after it was enacted into law, but it will be coming up. I contacted the Michigan Department of Agriculture, and we're hoping to get a bulletin from them with the details.
Very interesting. When we come back in a minute, we can talk about how this affects your day-to-day processing of adoption requests, and was this even a problem to begin with? We'll discuss that coming up shortly on WBCK. Jessica Gilbert is here from the Humane Society of South Central Michigan. We're talking about background checks, criminal background checks for those who may wish to adopt a pet. This is a law that I guess is in part been approved, or at least signed into law right before the end of the year. And this is an interesting thing. It makes sense that folks in your position would want to do what you can to make sure that a pet being adopted is going off into a favorable living situation. Has this been difficult to be certain of?
Now, all shelters are separate, so we are not affiliated with any other shelter or with HSUS. Everyone is kind of a standalone. Some humane societies or animal shelters have city or county animal control contracts. We do not. Everyone has a different sort of policy. So at our facility, individuals are already filling out a pretty detailed application. If they rent a home, we are checking with the landlord to make sure it's okay. We do reference checks. We do veterinary checks. This is one more check that we will be able to perform. What we do now, at least in Calhoun County, is I scour the criminal reports, the conviction reports.
Really?
And if I see something that isn't animal related, we will enter that into our database, and we check against that database when we check to adopt to someone.
Oh, my.
But they're not always published in there. The paper might not always publish them. I might not read it that day. So there's no system to be able to check how that happens. This will make it a little bit easier, and it'll help us check in other areas.
Well, this is, I guess, the best way to check the police connection. Wow.
Yes, absolutely. So prosecutors, from what I understand, will have to turn that information over so that it can be included with the specific details. It doesn't necessarily mean, though, the requirement is not that animal shelters will not adopt. The language is animal shelters may consider an individual's criminal history based on animal abuse convictions, and they may choose not to adopt to an individual convicted of animal abuse within the last 5 years. That leaves a little bit of freedom for them to be able to do that, and they are not required. Animal shelters or humane societies are not required to check. So not everybody will check. So, yeah, it's not 100%. It is definitely something that's helpful. And actually, I'm not sure if we will use it yet. We are waiting to get the details from the Department of Agriculture.
I see. So it could be an opportunity for a shelter, yours and others, to avail themselves of a check. So maybe it's not everyone. Maybe it's when you feel you have grounds to check. There's some sort of confirmation that you need.
We would want to apply it evenly across the board. So if we do it for one person, we'll do it for everyone. One of the things that would have helped us, I can give an example of this. A couple of years ago, we adopted out 2 cats to a woman who was in the Lansing area. And everything looked great. We did all of the checks that we needed to. We got a call about 6 months ago, a year ago, saying that one of the shelters in Lansing had those cats. The woman had been pulled up with being in a hoarding situation, and she had probably, I believe, had some previous hoarding convictions. If we would have been able to have access to that, we would have seen it, and we would not have adopted to her. In this case, one of the cats had passed away in her home. The other one, we were able to help find a home for that. But that sort of situation could have been prevented.
It's interesting that you illustrated that in that particular case, this person was from another town, some distance away. Is that a red flag when somebody comes to you from some distant place? We presume they passed 5 or 6 shelters on the way.
It can definitely be that. Sometimes people will say, so if I've been denied at another shelter, can I apply for you? But with petfinder.com, almost all shelters post their animals on petfinder.com, and you can type in the animal that you're looking for within a certain radius. So if we've got a highly desirable animal, we will get calls from even out of state for people who are interested in flying in to see that animal.
Oh, my.
We have an Old English Bulldog right now who... great dog, and we are getting calls from a distance about that. So at our shelter, we will only adopt out to people who live within a 5-hour radius.
5 hours, okay.
And the reason why that is because if something doesn't work out, we want to feel like we can drive to pick that animal up and bring it back to our shelter all within one day. And we've had to do that. I personally drove to Chicago a couple of years ago to pick up a cat in a bad situation. So
wow, that's incredible. And that is an illustration of the dedication that that you and folks at Humane Society, and I presume as well, I mean, we've all met folks in this business who are very, very dedicated to what they do.
Absolutely. For most people who work in shelters, it's a lifetime of care. This is not just a job. It's not just a career. It is really who you are.
Jessica Gilbert is here from the Humane Society of South Central Michigan. Criminal background check potential for shelters in the position of adopting out cats, dogs, animals. And we'll talk more about that in just a second on WBCK. We're here with Jessica Gilbert from the Humane Society of South Central Michigan. The state has decided that there is some latitude for authorities of fiduciaries of pet adoptions like the Humane Society of South Central Michigan to do criminal background checks to make sure a person doesn't have any animal abuse convictions in their past. Are there any privacy concerns with this?
Absolutely. I think that a lot of the people who are listening today are probably thinking, I have to have a criminal background check to adopt an animal. That's ridiculous. And that's something that our board will definitely take a look at when we are considering if we are going to do this and what the benefits are, considering the fact that we already have a pretty in-depth application process. We can also do home visits if we have any concerns. So definitely privacy is important. We will also have to have some very specific training for our staff members who will be looking at those criminal background checks. There's all kinds of privacy concerns. There are other things that will pull up that we would not care or consider when it comes to adopting, but anytime you have individuals taking a look at that kind of registry, you really have to worry about privacy.
Wow. Yeah, so it would almost be, I guess, similar to like a medical record situation where it's for your eyes only.
Absolutely. There will be certain things that we will make sure we'll have to shred paperwork that we come up with all of that. So I'm really hoping that the Michigan Department of Agriculture gives some specific rules and guidelines on how we're going to handle that. And then we will have to take a look at what we're going to do to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. So there are people bothered by the process you have now, that they feel an affront to being questioned about their loyalty to an animal they're adopting.
Absolutely. We hear that every day, that it's harder to adopt an animal than it is to adopt a child, which is not true. I'm sure that anybody who adopts out children would definitely say something about that.
I bet, yeah.
But our first responsibility is to the animals in our care. We have a lifetime of commitment to them, and it's really important for us to get it right the first time. Every time an animal returns to a shelter, it has a higher rate of not making it back out.
Wow.
They might have behavioral issues. They might have health or temperament issues. So it's really important that we get it right the first time. And our return rate is less than 2%. The national average is somewhere around 20. So it's really important for us that we get it right the first time.
And we presume then that 2% return rate is testimony, below average return rate, is testimony to the process that you have going now.
Absolutely. We have a great process, and yeah, you have to go through it, but we want to make sure that it's not just a good fit for the animal, but it's a good fit for you. You may fall in love with the animal that looks the cutest in your eyes, but that might not be the right fit for your home. You want to make sure that it's a good fit for everyone.
And we've talked about this in the Wiggly Tail Wednesday before, or at least alluded to it, that you try to drill down to what that really is. In other words, what's the right fit and what pet does this person really want?
Absolutely. Everybody wants a kitten, but a kitten is not appropriate for everyone's lifestyle. So you really have to take a look at that. I know personally that having a puppy would probably be more than I would like to handle at any time.
Yeah.
Puppies are a lot of work. They're really cute, but they're a lot of work.
But we can get caught up in that cuteness, can't we?
Absolutely. And we definitely see that with Pet Finder. People log on and they see these adorable pictures, and that's why you get calls from out of state. So people fall in love with the picture.
So that must be a tricky kind of maneuver that you have to do when you meet someone who you suspect might not really be making the best choice.
Yes, it's a definite delicate conversation. We want to make sure it's a good fit, but that's why we have everyone in the household come and meet with the animal, and we sit down and talk a little bit about the animal's needs and your needs. We want to make sure it's a good fit, and we hope that we'll be able to help you understand what would be a good fit as well.
All right. So in the meanwhile, the adoption process is intact. You will be asked to fill out an application. You do look into that application. You talked about landlords and things. It's pretty serious.
It is pretty serious. And within the next 90 days, I guess we'll find out if we're going to be going ahead doing the criminal background checks. But we definitely check into it all together. We want to make sure that it's a good fit. And most other shelters are going to have some sort of process like that. If the shelter that you're looking to adopt from doesn't have that process, you might want to ask what their return policy is, to make sure that you don't get an animal home and don't have any place for it to go if it doesn't work out.
Wow. All right. Lots of considerations. It's fun. We have a heck of a good time with Wiggly Tail Wednesday, but these are serious considerations, and folks need to think these things through.
Absolutely. Cats generally live somewhere up to 20 years, so you're looking at a lifetime commitment for the animal. Depending on how old you are, where are you going to be in 20 years? I think the oldest cat has lived into its 30s. So that's you've got to plan for that. And for the people who are looking to adopt exotic birds like African parrots, you're not looking at just your lifetime, but you've got to pass that bird on to your children and maybe your grandchildren.
Well, some animals do live a long time. I just read about an orca whale in the Pacific Northwest that they presume has died. She was 105. Can you believe that? Oh, my gosh. So, okay, I understand you're going to go through your procedure, consider it carefully. Your board will decide whether or not this is something you want to do. What's the climate among, just informal climate among folks in positions like yours? You sit around and say, boy, if we could have background checks, we'd solve a lot of problems.
We definitely talk a lot about the different things that would solve problems. We are always looking for better legislation. We are always looking for better prosecution. Sometimes it's really frustrating. I understand why if there's an animal abuse claim that's attached to something else, they might drop that in favor of the more serious charge or the other charge.
Sure.
We understand that happens, but we'd like to see legislation have a little bit more, have more teeth, and have the prosecutors actually go after some of the things that matter to us. In an ideal world, we would all be part of some kind of animal welfare database where we would be able to tie in throughout the state of Michigan, not necessarily into the criminal background check, but to be able to see, has this person adopted from somewhere else? Have they surrendered animals to another shelter? It would be really cool to be able to have that information. But because we are all separate organizations, at that point it would be voluntary, and it's going to be a long ways out.
Yeah. Well, and let's not forget that here on the show we've talked many times with folks who are in the business of helping people who have been abused, and we've heard more than once at this level and national level that very often if a person has a tendency to be abusive, they may be abusive to an animal first and then graduate, if you will, or regress to abusing a human. So this could be a signal.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that a lot of organizations would consider. You know, when you open that up and you're taking a look at that criminal background check, that's where it becomes a little bit sticky. What sorts of other crimes would you think, boy, I don't know if I'd want to adopt to someone in that situation?
Yeah.
That's why we definitely need some guidance on that.
All right. Well, we'll stay in touch on this, and it'll be interesting to see how this unfolds. Thank you for helping us understand it.
Thank you.
Jessica Gilbert, Humane Society, South Central Michigan, in Battle Creek.